My daughter told me if I came to visit her for Christmas, she would call the police. I mean it, Mom. Chloe's voice had crackled over the phone, thin and brittle like ice forming over a puddle. You set one foot on my property, and I will have you removed for trespassing. There was a moment of silence, a cavernous, empty space where a Merry Christmas should have been. In that silence, I pictured her, standing in her impeccably clean kitchen, one hand on her hip, the other strangling the phone. My grandchildren, Leo and Mia, would be in the next room, their innocent laughter a soundtrack to this maternal execution. They wouldn't understand. To them, I am Grandma, the source of forbidden cookies and elaborate stories. They wouldn't see the years of carefully plotted emotional warfare that had led to this declaration of a ceasefire I had no intention of honoring. I see, I finally said, my own voice a stranger to me, calm, measured, a placid lake over a churning abyss. Thank you for the clarification, dear. You have a wonderful holiday. I hung up before she could. There is power in having the last word, even if that word is silence. That was an hour ago. Now I sit in my armchair, the one facing the window, and watch the gentle snowfall coat the world in a blanket of pristine white. It looks clean, pure. A fresh start. How deceptive appearances can be. A single, perfectly decorated Christmas tree stands in the corner of my living room, its lights blinking in a cheerful, silent rhythm. The presents beneath it are all wrapped, tagged with neat, looping cursive. To Leo. To Mia. To Chloe. They are a monument to a love that has been returned to sender, a shrine to a relationship she thinks she has ended. $30,000. That was the price of my daughter's freedom for me. It's also the amount I painstakingly saved over 5 years, working a second job stocking shelves at the local grocer after I retired from my career as a librarian. My hands, once accustomed to the delicate rustle of turning pages, became calloused from cardboard boxes and pricing guns. My back, already complaining after 60 years, learned a new language of aches and pains. I did it for her dream of getting a master's degree, of building a better life than the one I could provide. That money, meant for her tuition, now sits in a high-yield savings account, untouched. It is my revenge. And my payback has only just begun. She doesn't understand the nature of my love. Chloe thinks love is soft words and gentle encouragement, the kind of saccharine nonsense she reads in her parenting blogs. My love is not like that. My love is steel. It is practical. It is the love my own mother showed me, not with hugs, but with well-scrubbed floors and a pantry that was never empty, even when my father's pay was late. Love, to my mother, was foresight. It was anticipating a need and meeting it before it became a crisis. She taught me that true care was not in coddling, but in building a fortress against the world's hardships. I tried to build a fortress for Chloe, but she kept complaining about the view. It's ironic, isn't it? The very act of love she resents me for, my suffocating, overbearing, all-consuming care, is the same force that fueled those grueling night shifts under the fluorescent glare of the grocery store. She called it overprotection. I called it motherhood. It began subtly, as these things always do. When Leo was born, I was her lifeline. I moved in for the first month, a gesture Chloe initially embraced with the desperation of a new mother. I cooked, I cleaned, I sterilized. I showed her how to swaddle him so he looked like a tiny, perfect burrito. I was the architect of her new domestic life. But soon, my help started to feel like criticism. It wasn't my intent, of course. I was simply optimizing. You should use the cloth diapers I bought you, Chloe. The disposables are full of chemicals that will leach into his skin. That brand of formula isn't the best. It has too much corn syrup. His digestion will be better with the organic one. Don't let him cry it out. It teaches the baby that no one is coming for them. It creates attachment issues. Each piece of advice was a perfectly laid brick in the wall she would eventually build between us. I remember one afternoon vividly, when Leo was about 2. We were at the park. He toddled too close to the swings, and another child, swinging high, nearly clipped him. Chloe rushed over, knelt to his level, and began a long, gentle explanation. Sweetheart, we need to be careful. The swings can be dangerous if we get too close. We have to respect other people's space. Leo, more interested in a nearby pigeon, wasn't listening. I saw the other mothers watching, their faces painted with that familiar, sanctimonious approval of her gentle parenting method. I couldn't stand it. I walked over, took Leo firmly but not unkindly by the arm, and said in a low, no-nonsense voice, "Leo, you do not run in front of the swings. You will get hurt. Do you understand?" His big brown eyes, so like his father's, welled with tears, but he nodded. Problem solved. I glanced at Chloe. The look on her face was one of pure humiliation. Later that day, she said, "You undermined me in front of everyone, Mom. You made me look like I don't know how to handle my own son." He was about to get his head knocked off, I replied calmly. Sometimes efficiency is more important than philosophy, Chloe. For me, it was a simple equation of safety. For her, it was a public execution of her maternal authority. By the time Mia arrived 3 years later, the jar of her resentments was full. My presence in her home became a source of constant tension. I'd rearrange her pantry to be more ergonomically efficient. I'd wipe down her counters a second time after she'd already cleaned them, just to get the missed spots. I'd cut her children's sandwiches into charming shapes while she was still fumbling with the bread knife, exhausted from a sleepless night. I was only trying to help, to lighten her load, to build the fortress. But to Chloe, every helpful act was an indictment of her own capabilities. I was a living, breathing checklist of her perceived failures. The breaking point came on Leo's 5th birthday. It was supposed to be a triumph. I had spent a week baking an elaborate, 3-tiered cake shaped like a pirate ship, complete with gingerbread planking and blue-tinted buttercream waves. It was a masterpiece, the kind of thing other grandmothers would see in photos and envy. When I arrived, the house already buzzing with small, sticky children, I saw it, a garish, store-bought sheet cake sitting on the counter. It was an unnatural blue and red affair with a cheap plastic superhero figurine stuck in the frosting. "Oh," I'd said, the pirate ship suddenly feeling ridiculously heavy in my arms. "I thought we'd agreed I would make the cake." "We did not agree, Mom," she'd said, her voice tight, avoiding my eyes. "You told me you were making a cake." I wanted Leo to have the one he picked out. The one he wanted. She didn't look at me. Instead, she took the store-bought cake and placed it ceremoniously in the center of the table, as if it were a prize trophy. My pirate ship was relegated to a side counter, an edible monument to my misjudgment. It was mostly ignored by the children, who were more interested in the plastic superhero they could keep. I watched as Chloe, glowing with a forced brightness, led a chorus of "Happy Birthday." I saw the way she looked at her son, a fierce, proprietary love in her eyes that seemed to have no room for me. That evening, as I was packing my Tupperware to leave, the pirate ship now a mangled wreck from the few adults who had taken pity on it, she cornered me in the kitchen. "I can't do this anymore, Mom." "Do what, dear?" "I was just trying to make his day special." "You're not making it special, you're making it yours." Her voice rose, cracking with a frustration that was years in the making. "Everything has to be your way, the right way. You come into my house and you take over. You don't trust my judgment on anything, from diapers to birthday cakes. It's my life. They are my children. You have to let me be their mother." I remember the sting of her words, sharper than any physical blow. "I raised you, Chloe. I think I know a thing or two about being a mother." "And you were wonderful," she conceded, her voice softening for a moment before hardening again. "But your job is done. I need you to be a grandmother now. Not a second, better qualified mom who lives down the street." I packed up my pirate ship, my dignity, and my hurt, and I left. After that, I tried to respect her boundaries, or at least the appearance of them. I called before visiting. I bit my tongue when I saw Mia with her shoes on the wrong feet. I smiled politely when Chloe served macaroni and cheese from a box for dinner instead of the vegetable-laden purees I would have made. It was a Cold War, fought in the trenches of unspoken criticism and polite, distant phone calls. The distance between our houses was 10 miles. The distance between our hearts was a light year. Then came the letter from the university. Chloe had been accepted into a prestigious Master of Business Administration program. It was her dream, a way to pivot from her part-time marketing job into a real career, to give her children the financial security she craved. I was proud, genuinely. But my pride was quickly tempered by the cold, hard reality of the tuition fees. She and her husband, Mark, were comfortable, but not wealthy. This would be a major strain. Mark was a good man, I suppose. Steady, kind, but passive. He let Chloe handle the difficult things, a fact I found both disappointing and, now, strategically useful. "We'll make it work," she told me over the phone, her voice brimming with a determined optimism I hadn't heard in years. "I'll pick up more freelance work. Mark's company might promote him. And I'm going to start working a second job on weekends, maybe waiting tables." "Chloe, that's insane," I said, the familiar worry coiling in my gut. "You'll never see the children. You'll burn yourself out." "We need the money, Mom. What other choice do I have?" Here it was. My opening. My chance to be needed again, to be essential. This was something she couldn't do without me. "I can help," I'd offered, keeping my voice even. "I can babysit while you're at class or working." It would solve everything. There was a pause, and in it I heard the calculations, the weighing of her pride against her pragmatism. "You would do that?" "Of course, dear. I'm your mother." I had started planning immediately. I would stock her freezer with healthy, home-cooked meals. I would create educational play schedules for Leo and Mia. I would handle the laundry, the tidying, the chauffeuring to preschool. I would be the sturdy scaffolding that allowed her to build her new life. I would be indispensable. A week later, she called me back. Her voice was different. Cooler. More distant. She had chosen her pride. "Mark and I talked it over," she said. "And we've decided to hire a nanny." The words knocked the air from my lungs. "A nanny? A stranger? But why would you pay a stranger when I can do it for free?" "Because it's cleaner this way, Mom," she said, and the clinical nature of the word cleaner was like a scalpel to the heart. "With a nanny, there are set hours. There are boundaries. It's a professional relationship. With you, it gets complicated." "Complicated?" I whispered. "Looking after my own grandchildren is complicated?" "Yes," she said, her voice firm, unwavering. "It is. I'm sorry. We just think this is what's best for our family." For our family. The words echoed in my mind. I was no longer a part of it. I was an outsider, a complication to be managed. That was the moment the love in my heart began to curdle, to harden into something colder, sharper. It was the moment I decided that if she wanted to do it on her own, then she would do it entirely on her own. My fortress was rejected. Fine. Let her face the siege alone. So, when she called me a month later, her voice frantic because the nanny had canceled and she had a major exam, I felt a flicker of dark satisfaction. "I'm sorry, dear," I said, my voice dripping with false sympathy. "I have my book club tonight. I can't possibly cancel." I spent the evening reading a novel, a cup of herbal tea steaming beside me. A few months after that, another call. "Mom? I hate to ask, but Mia's in the school play tomorrow afternoon and Mark's stuck in traffic coming back from a business trip. My boss just moved a client meeting to the same time. It's my biggest account. Could you possibly pick her up and take her? I'll be there as soon as I can." "Oh, Chloe, what a shame," I'd clucked, looking at my completely empty calendar. "Tomorrow is my weekly bridge game. The girls count on me. I'm afraid it's impossible." I saw the pictures on her social media feed the next day. A blurry photo of Mia, dressed as a sheep, standing alone on stage. The caption read, "So proud of my little star. Had to move heaven and earth to get here, but I made it just in time for her big line. Hashtag working mom life, hashtag so tired." I zoomed in on Mia's face. She wasn't smiling. I felt another cold, satisfying click in my soul, like a lock falling into place. Each refusal was a carefully placed stone, building a wall between us. She stopped asking. Her phone calls became less frequent. I learned about her life through the filtered lens of social media. Pictures of the kids looking tired. Posts from Chloe, late at night, about the struggles of balancing work, school, and motherhood. Vague statuses about being overwhelmed and running on fumes. I watched her slow-motion decline with the detached interest of a scientist observing a controlled experiment. I had lived that life. The exhaustion, the feeling of drowning in responsibilities, the slow erosion of self. I could have thrown her a life raft. I could have been her harbor. Instead, I chose to be the distant, unblinking lighthouse, watching her ship steer directly into the storm. Because that's what she had wanted. Independence. Boundaries. A clean relationship. I was giving it to her. The breakdown came on a Tuesday in November. I got a call from an unknown number. It was Chloe's next-door neighbor, a kind woman named Brenda. "Eleanor? I'm so sorry to bother you," she began, her voice hushed and worried. "It's about Chloe. I'm a little concerned. The kids have been crying for a while now, and when I went to check on her, she wasn't making much sense." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" She was just sitting on the floor in the living room, staring at the wall. "The house is a mess, and she just kept muttering about a deadline and how she couldn't make the words work. I don't think she should be alone with the children right now." I was in my car in 5 minutes. All the anger, all the hurt, all the calculated revenge evaporated, replaced by the primal, instinctual terror of a mother for her child. The 10-mile drive felt like a cross-country trek. When I used the emergency key, she didn't know I still had to let myself in. The scene was worse than Brenda had described. It was chaos. Toys, clothes, and dirty dishes littered every surface. The air smelled of stale coffee and desperation. Leo and Mia were huddled together on the sofa, watching cartoons with the volume turned up to a deafening level, their faces tear-streaked and pale. And there, in the middle of the floor, was Chloe. She was surrounded by textbooks and scattered papers, her laptop open on her lap. Her hair was matted, her eyes were vacant and red-rimmed. She was rocking back and forth, ever so slightly, whispering to herself. She didn't even look up when I came in. I didn't say a word. I walked past her and turned off the television. I knelt in front of my grandchildren. "Grandma's here," I said softly. "Let's go get cleaned up, okay?" They clung to me, their small bodies trembling. I took them upstairs, bathed them, and put them into fresh pajamas. I read them a story until their breathing evened out and they fell into an exhausted sleep, tucked into their beds. Then I went back downstairs. Chloe hadn't moved. The dam of my resolve, the cold wall I had so carefully constructed, finally broke. The plan, the payback, it all seemed so petty, so cruel in the face of this raw, human suffering. My daughter was broken, and I had helped break her. I knelt in front of her, my knees cracking in protest. "Chloe," I said gently. Her head snapped up. Her eyes focused on me, and for a second, I saw a flicker of the old anger. But it was quickly replaced by something else, utter, bottomless despair. Her face crumpled. A gut-wrenching sob tore from her throat, a sound of such profound pain that it physically hurt me to hear it. "I can't do it, Mom," she wept, the words tumbling out between gasps. "I can't do any of it. I'm failing. I'm failing at school. I'm failing my job. I'm failing my kids. I'm failing." She collapsed into my arms, her body shaking with convulsive sobs. I held her, stroking her hair, my own tears silently tracing paths down my cheeks. I held my daughter, my brilliant, stubborn, fiercely independent daughter, as she fell completely apart in my arms. There were no "I told you so's." There were no lectures or recriminations. There was only the quiet, steady presence she had so desperately fought against, now a rock for her to cling to in the storm. I stayed for 2 weeks. I sent Mark a text explaining the situation. He came home immediately, his face a mask of shock and guilt. While he focused on Chloe, getting her to a doctor, ensuring she slept and ate, I took over the rest. I cleaned the house from top to bottom. I did mountains of laundry. I cooked nutritious, comforting meals that filled the silent home with the aroma of normalcy. One evening, Mark found me in the kitchen, long after the others were asleep, polishing his silverware. "Eleanor, you don't have to do that," he said, his voice weary. "We're so grateful for everything. You saved us." I didn't look up from my work. "A family does what it must, Mark," I said quietly, the words a gentle rebuke. I was not a guest. I was the foundation, restoring order where he had allowed chaos to fester. He had no reply. I took the children to the park. I helped Leo with his reading. I taught Mia how to tie her shoes. I became the calm, organizing force at the center of their lives. I became, once again, indispensable. Chloe slowly came back to herself. The light returned to her eyes. She started smiling again. She would watch me with the children, a complex expression on her face, a mixture of gratitude, shame, and a quiet, weary resignation. The power dynamic had irrevocably shifted. I had won, but the victory felt hollow, coated in the bitter ash of her pain. I was no longer the overbearing mother. I was the savior. The one who had swept in when all was lost. She owed me. She knew it. I knew it. The debt was unspoken, but it hung in the air between us, thicker than the scent of the pot roast I cooked for dinner. When it was time for me to go, she hugged me at the door. "Thank you, Mom," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I couldn't have. I don't know what would have happened without you." "Of course, dear," I said, patting her back. "I'm your mother. I'm always here for you." Which brings me back to tonight. Christmas Eve. The phone call threatening police action was not an act of a strong, independent woman drawing a boundary. It was the terrified thrashing of someone who felt the cage door closing again. She had let me back in out of desperation, and now she was desperate to push me back out, terrified that the savior would once again become the warden. She feared that the price for my help was her autonomy. And she was right. I glanced at the savings account app on my phone. The $30,000 is still there, accruing a paltry interest. My revenge was never about money. It was about worth. I needed her to see what my help, my overbearing, suffocating, all-consuming help, was truly worth. I needed her to understand the cost of doing it on her own. The cost had been her sanity. Payback had been delivered. The snow has stopped falling outside. The world is hushed, still, and impossibly beautiful. The blinking lights on my solitary tree reflect in the dark glass of the window, a galaxy of lonely stars. My phone buzzes on the side table, a sharp, intrusive sound in the profound silence. I pick it up. A new text message. From Chloe. The screen glows, illuminating my face in the dim room. My heart gives a single, hard thump against my ribs. My thumb hovers over the notification, but I don't open it yet. I savor the moment, this precipice. An hour ago, she was threatening me with the law. What could she possibly be saying now? Is it an apology? A doubling down on her threat? Or is it something else entirely? The message preview on the lock screen is short, just a handful of words. I read them and a small, slow smile spreads across my lips. It is not a smile of joy, or of forgiveness, or of Christmas cheer. It is a smile of absolute. My daughter told me if I came to visit her for Christmas, she would call the police. "I mean it, Mom." Chloe's voice had crackled over the phone, thin and brittle like ice forming over a puddle. "You set one foot on my property, and I will have you removed for trespassing." There was a moment of silence, a cavernous, empty space where a Merry Christmas should have been. In that silence, I pictured her, standing in her impeccably clean kitchen, one hand on her hip, the other strangling the phone. My grandchildren, Leo and Mia, would be in the next room, their innocent laughter a soundtrack to this maternal execution. They wouldn't
So, another story of my grandmother has ended, and be clicking here, you will have when more such stories.